Okay, this one is for me, CPC exam and other stuff. So this student says, currently studying for the CPC, is there any advice about other stuff that is required to know, like the business of medicine, the OIG work plan, RVUs? I can grasp everything else, but for some reason those sections are mental block. Any advice? Yeah, in our physician-based coding course, chapter 1 covers these topics, and you'll also find it in the AAPC CPC Study Guide. They have on the AAPC website, let me just go there first to show you what I'm looking at. When you go under certification, then CPC, and you scroll down, and under, well, actually the first tab here, it tells you the areas, the topics that they test you on. Well, there's this one here, practice management, that's kind of a generic catch-all category. And there's about 9 to 10 questions out of the 150 questions on it. And those are some of the things that she mentioned in her question that will be on it. And so I basically went through chapter 1 of the textbook, which is the AAPC's textbook for physician-based coding, and they have types of payers, so they feel it's important for you to understand the difference between government payers like Medicare and Medicaid and private payers. It goes into talking about the medical record and what does an E&M note look like. They discuss the SOAP format, subjective, objective assessment plan, and then they talk about operative report documentation. So anything on these general topics could be in that section on the board exam. Medical necessity. Basically, medical necessity equals your diagnostic coding, which makes Alicia very happy. It makes diagnostic coding important to support the procedure that was done, which ties in with your local carrier decisions that Medicare puts out there, so you can know for any given procedure what diagnosis codes support that procedure where Medicare would consider paying for it. So they want you to have some familiarity with that. Advanced beneficiary notices, ABNs. That's something that you have a patient sign if you know or suspect that a service is not going to be covered because maybe they don't have one of those diagnoses on the list. And, by the way, those diagnoses on the list are not a shopping list for us to use as coders to say, okay, we'll use this one. You're supposed to be coding what the physician documented their diagnosis is. And then, if that is not on the approved list, that's when you have a patient fill out an advanced beneficiary notice. Then we've got HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It talks about national standards and code sets that everyone's supposed to be using. It also has a portion about privacy and security. So anyone who's gone to the doctor, they'll say, oh, you need to sign this form for HIPAA. And then the High Tech Act. I'm going through these quickly because my end advice, okay, compliance in the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General. My advice for all of these is just do a Google search, quite honestly. You don't need to know for the board exam any of these in depth, but you should be familiar with them so they don't seem like complete Greek. So, in this webinar, this is, all of these will probably take several hours to go through and do a lecture on. So if you take the course, then you'll get the lecture there. But I would just do a Google search. A lot of this information you'll find on the CMS website, and do some research that way. I just did a webinar yesterday about how to be your own consultant using research tools online, and I'm going to get a recording of that and be offering that to our group as well for CEUs. And so look for that, and I show you how you can use things to start, just pretty much how Alicia and I go and research the answers to these questions we give you. And 9 times out of 10, we start with a Google search or we go to our encoder and we just start pulling pieces of information together and we synthesize it and then present it to you. So that webinar will teach you how to do it for yourself, and you can use that to go and explore these topics to prepare for those 10 questions on the exam or just for general knowledge. And by the way, a lot of these overlap with the CPCH credential, with the physician practice management credential. So, it does benefit us all to understand these concepts. Now, if you join our discussion forum, codingcertification.org/forum, or our email list, which is a Yahoo Groups email list, this kind of stuff comes up all the time. People start talking about HIPAA and they talk about compliance. That's how I learned back in 1999 when I got my credential. I started an email list called the CRNL, which we recently changed the name to CCOL because it's still my list. And they talk about this stuff all the time. I'm like, what is that? So I'd go Google it and I'd read, oh, okay, now I know what that is. And then if someone was stuck on something and they asked a question, I'd watch how others with more experience answered it. So that's really the best way to learn. So get on our forum and our email list and you will be educated whether you want to be or not. And then she had also asked about RVUs. I don't recall that being on the exam. If anyone has recently taken the exam, if you want to put in the chat whether or not you remember a question on RVUs. I mean, we can't talk about specific questions, but I really don't remember them asking about that. But I did cover it on the other slide with the NCCI edits. It's a relative value unit, and it's basically a way to compare one CPT code to another to know the weight of it.
Get more CPC exam tips, coding certification training, and CEU credits. Go to www.codingcertification.org.